Hello everyone, my name is Arahad. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about Guild Wars 2 and what makes it such a unique MMO and why is it so different than other MMO titles. Guild Wars 2 is a high fantasy mmorpg that combines a mix of both PvP and PvE and a solid storyline. In this video, you'll see a small review of the game, explanation of a few mechanics and systems, alongside my personal opinion about the game itself. The story is delivered in many different ways in Guild Wars 2, whether by questing, doing living world content, expansion content, or simply grabbing a lore book that you can find inside the game and reading it. Now, the story in Guild Wars 2 is solid to say the least, but as every story has flaws, Guild Wars 2's story also has its ups and downs. However, the story in Guild Wars 2 is always interesting. One time you're solving political conflicts and schemes, and the other you're fighting giant dragons. If there's one thing Guild Wars 2 nails, it's combat. Seriously, it's a breath of fresh air in a genre filled with the usual boring tab targeting combat in almost every possible MMO. I've played my fair share of MMOs, and the usual tab targeting, button mashing routine, it gets old. But in Guild Wars 2, every fight feels engaging and skill-driven. It's a hybrid between action combat and tab targeting, taking the best aspects of the two systems and fusing it into one. Now, the game has 9 distinct classes or professions, as the game calls it. Guild Wars 2 prides itself in straying away from the usual tank, healer, damage dealer roles. Every class can do these roles, making the experience unique and fun. You've got the warrior, where each blow genuinely carries weight. The elementalist. It's not just about flashy spells, there's strategy in picking the right element at the right time. And the thief. It's not all about stealth, it's about timing, positioning, and choosing when to strike. Then there's the Guardian, holding the front line, a perfect blend of offense and defense. The Necromancer, wielding dark magic and raising the dead, the usual Necromancer stuff. The Mesmer, a class that's all about deception, illusions and mind games. The Engineer keeps things unpredictable with gadgets, turrets and alchemical concoctions, while the Ranger melds with their pet, offering diverse tactical options. And finally, the Revenant, tapping into the power of legends from Tyria's past. It's a masterclass in balancing versatility and complexity, sort of a mix between the Thief and the Warrior classes. One feature I appreciate is the ability to swap weapons and skills. It gives room to experiment, ensuring battles never feel stale. Of course, like any game, it's not without its flaws, but when it comes to combat, Guild Wars 2 offers depth and dynamism that's hard to find elsewhere. It's a system that rewards learning and mastering your class, rather than just grinding levels, and for me, that makes all the difference. Guild Wars 2's approach to PvE represents a distinctive shift from traditional MMO mechanics. This evaluation covers key elements such as dungeons, fractals, and the general PvE landscape. Dungeons in Guild Wars 2 are woven into Tyria's expansive lore, making them not only combat encounters, but also narrative experiences. Each dungeon is designed with its own set of challenges and stories, offering players insights into the game's broader world and history. The Fractals, or Fractals of the Mists as the game calls it, is another aspect of the game's PvE that deserves mention. These instances provide players with a series of short, scalable challenges. One notable mechanic, Agony, introduced in higher fractal levels, necessitates strategic planning and coordination, rather than simply gearing up and stat upgrades. This design choice emphasizes player skill and team synergy, along with prior understanding of the encounters over equipment stats. The game's event-driven PvE system stands out in its dynamism. Unlike many MMOs with static questlines, Guild Wars 2 offers dynamic events that can evolve based on player participation and decisions, creating a more fluid and interactive environment. World bosses in Guild Wars 2 are large-scale events that demand cooperation among a significant number of players. These events are not merely about tackling a powerful foe, but require multi-phase coordination and strategy. It's worth noting that, like any MMO, Guild Wars 2 has moments where repetitive gameplay can emerge. However, the game's commitment to dynamic events and varied content always proves to be more fun than the boring usual MMO grinds. So, in Guild Wars 2, instead of constantly feeling the need to keep up, chasing the latest stats and gear to be relevant, Guild Wars 2 lets you explore different aspects at your own pace. No mad rush. It's more about expanding your experience, unlocking new skills, exploring vast lands, and truly diving deep into what the game offers. It's refreshing, like sipping iced tea on a hot summer day. Instead of the usual wave of new patches making your hard-earned gear outdated, you can enjoy the game and not feel like you're lagging behind. Unlike the traditional grind-heavy leveling in many MMORPGs, the Mastery system is a unique take on endgame content, so that when you've hit level 80, you're granted access to Mastery tracks, each bound to a specific expansion or area. Unlocking these isn't just about XP. You've got to scour the land for Mastery points, each cunningly tucked away in corners of the world or tied to achievements. Every point you collect then funnels into specific tracks, giving you perks like improved gliding, new mount abilities, or the ability to interact differently with the world around you. And mounts? They don't just stand there looking pretty. Through the Mastery system, your mount evolves, gaining new capabilities, new abilities boosts. Guild Wars 2 doesn't just give you a story, it gives you your story. You start off navigating the politics of the game's diverse races. Each decision you make changes the narrative of your unique journey. Eventually, you're not just some random hero, you're forming the Dragon's Watch, a legendary guild with the task of hunting down the Elder Dragons. The storytelling has its own glow-up too. Starting off with cinematic sequences like Final Fantasy, the game has evolved to having real-time dialogues. The game has 5 races. You've got the usual boring humans, the Azura, these pint-sized geeks, the Norn, Vikings, but with a dash of fantasy seasoning, and Silveri, a nature-loving plant people race. And finally, the Char, the badass war-torn Ascalonian cat people. Each race in Guild Wars 2 has its own starting zone, questline, and backstory, making each experience feel unique. Character customization is detailed enough. Not only can you tweak every eyelash and scar, but once you've unlocked dyes, you can change the color of your gear and mounts. The mounts. The mounts in Guild Wars 2 are not merely a speed boost to get you from point A to point B. Instead, mounts have their abilities and mastery tracks. You can even customize them with skins or change their colors using the detailed dye system. The Raptor is basically the long jump champion of the animal kingdom. They jump long distances, helping you cross bridges, jump from one mountain to another, or from one roof to another. Springers are a mix of rabbits and kangaroos on steroids. Their jumping ability allows you to jump to insane heights, helping you get to the roof of a tower. Skimmers make skimming over water seem as cool as flying. They float over water with insanely increased speed. The Jackal isn't your regular canine companion, boasting the ability to teleport short distances and enter sand gates in the path of fire areas. The Griffin is possibly my favourite mount in any game. They make flying enjoyable. You're not just floating over the skies, but you can do tricks, flips, and aerial manoeuvres. Mastering it is a form of artistry. The Roller Beetle can roll through maps and even ramp off cliffs with insane speeds. Once you unlock it, you can participate in contests and races for it. Sadly, I still don't have that mount yet because unlocking it is such an insane grind that I don't know if it's even worth it or not. Slow and steady don't always finish last. The Turtle mount, introduced in the End of Dragons expansion, brings a tanky presence to your mount lineup. Its strong shell isn't just for defense, it's equipped with siege weapons, turning the turtle into a mobile battle fortress of sorts. There is also the War Claw, which is a world versus world exclusive mount that is only usable there. Noting that this is the only mount that you can use inside World vs. World, it's the least unique abilities-wise, since it's just got a leap ability similar to the Raptor one, but a little bit worse. And you don't really need it in the open world. but it's the only usable mount in World vs. World, which is cool. And last but not least, we have the Dragon, well, the Sky Scale. The Winged Wonder is like the helicopter of Tyria. It can hover, climb vertical surfaces, and is less about gliding and more about controlled flying. Jumping into GW2 is like stepping into a world that's been through 11 years of epic tales. The map is filled with open world objectives. GW2 does the open world events right. You're not just ticking off boxes. Discovering new places, waypoints, and jumping puzzles actually feels rewarding and fun. The game also throws random events into the mix. It's not just go here, do that. These events have a life of their own, reshaping zones and sometimes spiraling into even bigger showdowns. World vs. World. If you've ever dreamt of partaking in epic large-scale battles, like Battle of Helm's Deep from Lord of the Rings scale, World vs. World is probably the closest thing to it in an MMO. Massive battlefields and war's constant push and pull over strategic points guaranteed. But there's also the progression system. In World vs. World, your excellence on the battlefield gets rewarded. Every trap you set, every fortress you siege, and every player you help contribute to your personal growth. The real gem of World vs. World is the sense of camaraderie. Guild and players who might be total strangers in the PvE world suddenly become brothers in arms. Everyone rallies under the banner of a charismatic commander. World bosses you'll meet aren't your typical, oh look, a big monster, let's poke it type deal. These are straight-up, screen-dominating, colossal creatures. Picture this, you're strolling around Tyria, doing heart quests or just venturing in the open world. Then suddenly you hear the roars and clashes from the horizon. The ground quakes, birds flee. As you sprint towards the fuss, you see a massive leviathan that makes Godzilla look like a house gecko. The beauty of these world bosses isn't just in their size or the thrill of the combat, but in the massive collaborative effort they inspire. It's not just a solo player trying to whack a dragon on the toe, it's a team of warriors, mages and rangers. Everyone has a role, and under the guidance of a battle-hardened commander, each move becomes part of a greater strategy. It's absolute mayhem, spells flying everywhere, warriors charging, healers working overtime. Sure, it might seem overwhelming, but there's something truly fascinating about it. A few weeks ago, Guild Wars 2 launched its fourth and latest expansion, called Secrets of the Obscure. The expansion introduces an aerial archipelago, offering 2 new aerial maps from the outset, with more anticipated in forthcoming updates. Of particular note is the Wizard's Tower, the same wizard tower that was floating mysteriously above the sea near Kessex Hills. After almost 11 years of basically nothing happening there, ArenaNet finally decides to use it and utilize it in the game's newest expansion. Now, the Astral Ward emerges as a primary faction, where players can engage in skirmishes against the Cryptis. Not sure if I pronounced this correctly. Anyway, the Cryptis are a demonic race that invades Tyria using portals called rifts. Now, if you ever played the MMO called Rift Online, a long-dead MMO that it's in maintenance mode nowadays by the way, the Rift system in Guild Wars 2 is similar to it, where rifts appear randomly in the map, with mobs getting out of these rifts requiring player efforts to close and seal them for epic loot. As players advance, the challenges escalate, rifts difficulty and world bosses with a rewarding system to complement their progression. Central to this expansion is the artifact termed the Heart of the Obscure. The element plays an important role in sealing rifts and confronting formidable enemies. Another feature is the Wizard's Vault, which provides players with a way to get unique currencies by completing its daily objectives, lending a dynamic to the in-game economy, meaning that you can purchase gold, laurels, and mystic coins with it. From a combat perspective, the introduction of Buildcraft is noteworthy. It provides enhanced weapon accessibility for elite specializations, thereby broadening the array of tactical approaches. Additionally, every profession receives a new weapon, complemented by a revamped rune system and the integration of relics. For group content, the expansion offers strike missions, with 2 available at launch. A fractal dungeon is also on the horizon, which should cater to those seeking more PvE challenges. The expansion's mount system sees the revamped mastery system of the Sky Scale, new mastery features. Notably, these allow for improved aerial navigation capabilities and an easier, less grindy way to unlock it. I mean, it's the change I long awaited for, since I could never unlock that mount because of the huge grind behind it, so I'm happy that I can finally do it. In terms of rewards, the expansion is generous. New armor sets such as the Rift Hunter and Astral Ward are accompanied by diverse new in-game items and crafting reagents. Another thing to note that ArenaNet will release content every few months for the expansion, expanding the story with more missions and quests, more builds and more. Lastly, the monetization. Guild Wars 2 is free to play but requires the purchase of expansions in order to access certain features like the elite specs, mounts, the expansion masteries such as gliders and fishing. You can explore the core game world, unlock all core masteries, participate in core dungeons and PvE and PvP content such as World vs. World, structured PvP battlegrounds and more. You can also get to level 80, which is the max level without purchasing anything. However, the limits I mentioned previously hinder your experience by a great margin. However, the game is pretty cheap price-wise and goes on sale pretty often. They even offer expansions giveaways sometimes too. If you enjoyed this video, you can like and subscribe for more. Until next time, be safe, keep your spirits high, and have a pleasant day.